When I was just a boy, my father used to tell me, "Frank, the way you treat people who can't do anything for you, that is the true measure of who you are." I have carried those words into my courtroom every single day for decades, but every so often, a case comes along that tests the very fabric of that lesson. A young man walked into my court with a pocket full of money, a heart full of arrogance, and a mouth full of insults aimed at a frontline hero. What he did to a nurse who works 12-hour shifts just to keep strangers alive, it didn't just break the law, it broke my heart. When this case file landed on my desk, it looked like a standard disorderly conduct charge. On paper, it was simple: assault by offensive contact outside an emergency clinic. But as I've learned over the years, the small cases are often the ones that reveal the biggest rot in a person's character. The complainant was Ms. Elena Morales, a nurse, a mother, someone who spends her nights in the trenches of human suffering, picking up overtime to make ends meet. Then we had the defendant, Mr. Logan Wexler. He's in his early 20s, the son of a billionaire whose name is literally plastered on the side of city buildings. I sat there in chambers, looking at these two names, and I thought about the massive divide between them. Money can buy you comfort, yes. It can buy you the best legal team in the state, but it also buys a dangerous sense of invincibility. People like Logan Wexler often grow up believing the world is a vending machine. You put in enough cash, and you get exactly what you want. My responsibility as a judge is to ensure that in this courtroom, the law is the same for the woman in scrubs and the boy in the designer suit. The courtroom is the one place where privilege shouldn't have a louder microphone. Let's look at what happened that night. It was after midnight, the witching hour in an ER where tempers are frayed and resources are thin. Logan Wexler walked into that clinic with a friend who, according to witnesses, looked absolutely mortified to be there. Logan wasn't there with a life-threatening injury. He had a sore ankle, but he walked up to the triage desk not asking for help, but demanding it. When Miss Morales told him, with the professional patience only a nurse possesses, that he would have to wait his turn because they were triaging more critical patients, Logan Wexler lost his mind. He didn't just argue. He went for the jugular of her dignity. He pointed down at his shoes, some limited edition designer pair, and he shouted loud enough for the entire waiting room to hear, "Do you see these? My shoes cost your entire yearly salary." Think about the psychology of that statement for a second. That isn't just an insult, it's a declaration of worth. He was telling her that her life's work, her sacrifices, and her value as a human being were worth less than the leather on his feet. The security footage, which I reviewed multiple times, showed Ms. Morales remaining incredibly calm. She didn't snap back, she didn't yell, she turned to continue her work, and that's when the situation turned from verbal abuse to a criminal act. Logan Wexler stepped into her personal space, leaned forward, and he spit on her. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mistake made in the heat of a cough. It was a deliberate, calculated act of dehumanization. To spit on someone is to say, "You are lower than the dirt on the ground." It is the ultimate gesture of contempt. As I read that in the police report, I thought of my father again. I thought of the people who scrub the floors of this courthouse. I thought of the hardworking people who have to swallow their pride every day just to provide for their families. And I thought about how Logan Wexler looked at a woman who saves lives for a living and decided she was a target for his saliva. When the security guard finally intervened, Logan didn't look remorseful. He smirked. He looked at her and said, "What are you going to do about it? My dad owns this town." In that moment, his problem wasn't a sore ankle, it was a hollow soul. In my courtroom, we don't rely on hearsay, we rely on the facts. And the facts against Mr. Wexler were overwhelming. We had 2 different camera angles. While the footage was grainy, the body language was unmistakable. You could see the aggression, the invasion of space, and the physical flinch of Ms. Morales as the spit landed on her scrubs. More importantly, we had 7 independent witness statements. These weren't friends of the nurse. These were other patients, people in pain themselves, who were so disgusted by what they saw that they stayed behind to talk to the police. Then there was the medical report. People think spitting is nothing, but in a post-pandemic world, and especially in a clinical setting, bodily fluids are a biohazard. Ms. Morales had to undergo blood tests. She had to deal with the anxiety of what if for weeks. The police did their job perfectly. They didn't treat him differently because of his last name. They cited him, they processed him, and they let the system take its course. But what struck me most about the evidence wasn't the act itself. It was Logan's behavior after the arrest. He wasn't scared. He wasn't crying. He was calm. He was laughing with his friend in the back of the patrol car. He truly believed that this was just a minor inconvenience that a checkbook could fix. He believed the world would simply bend back into shape for him because it always had. By the time the trial date arrived, this case had gone viral. It was all over TikTok, Twitter, and the local news. People were calling for his head. They were calling for the billionaire brat to be locked up. My clerk told me the internet was exploding with memes about his expensive shoes. I want to be very clear about how I handle this. The internet is not my boss. I don't sentence people based on likes or retweets. Whether 8 people are watching or 8 million, my job is to be the anchor of the law. Public outrage can be a powerful thing, but it can also be a blind thing. My duty is to ignore the noise and focus on the person standing in front of me. However, I couldn't ignore why it went viral. It touched a nerve because everyone knows a Logan Wexler. Everyone has felt the sting of someone thinking they are better than them because of a bank account. This case wasn't just about a nurse and a spoiled son anymore. It was about the collective exhaustion of a society that is tired of seeing privilege wallow away scot-free. The day of the hearing, the energy in the room was heavy. Logan Wexler walked in wearing a $3,000 suit, looking like he was attending a board meeting rather than a criminal proceeding. He had that "let's get this over with" look on his face. On the other side of the room was Ms. Morales. She was dressed simply, looking exhausted. She didn't want the cameras. She didn't want the fame. She just wanted her dignity back. I started the proceedings. "Mr. Wexler, do you understand the charges?" He gave a dry yes. "You are charged with assault by offensive contact. Do you understand that under the law, spitting on a human being is considered a physical assault?" He looked at me with a smirk that curdled my blood. "I didn't hit her, Judge. It's not like I broke her arm. It's being blown out of proportion." I leaned over my bench. "Mr. Wexler, this is not a social club. This is a court of law. Do not mistake my patience for weakness. We are here because you treated a professional woman like a trash can." The prosecutor played the video. As the footage ran, the room went silent. You could hear the intake of breath when he leaned in to spit. I watched Logan's face. He wasn't looking at the screen with regret. He was looking at his watch. I turned to Ms. Morales. "Ma'am, would you like to speak?" She stood up, her voice trembling but clear. "Your Honor, I have been a nurse for 15 years. I've been yelled at by patients in pain. I've been cursed at by people having mental health crises. I can handle that. But when this man looked at me and told me my life was worth less than his shoes, and then he spit on me, I didn't feel like a nurse anymore. I felt like an object. I went home and I scrubbed my skin until it was red, but I couldn't get the feeling off me." The room was pin-drop quiet. I looked at Logan. "Do you have anything to say to that?" He stood up, prompted by his lawyer. "I'm sorry if she took it the wrong way. I was having a bad day. My ankle was killing me." "Took it the wrong way?" I asked. "Is there a right way to be spit on, Mr. Wexler? And your bad day does not give you the right to ruin someone else's year." Then, the turning point. My bailiff handed me a stack of papers. It was a series of leaked text messages and social media posts Logan had made since the incident. I read them aloud. "This judge is a clown. He loves the cameras. My dad's lawyer is going to clear this in 10 minutes. The nurse is just looking for a payday." I looked at him, and for the first time, I let him see my anger. Not a wild anger, but a cold, judicial disappointment. "Mr. Wexler, you think this is a joke? You think my courtroom is a stage for your ego? He tried to backtrack. Those were private messages, Judge. They don't mean anything. They mean everything, I replied. They show that you haven't learned a single thing. You think money is a shield. You think because your father's name is on a building, you are above the basic rules of human decency. His lawyer tried to salvage it, asking for mercy and understanding for a young man's mistakes. But a mistake is something you do once and regret. This was a lifestyle. I looked at Logan Wexler, and I knew that a fine wouldn't work. A $500 fine to a billionaire's son is like a penny to a normal person. It's not a punishment. It's a fee for bad behavior. I said, Mr. Wexler, I've been on this bench for a long time. I've seen people who have nothing give everything they have to help a neighbor, and I've seen people who have everything act like they are the only ones who matter. Today, that ends. The room held its breath. I find you guilty on all counts, but I'm not just going to fine you. I'm going to educate you. The sentence, 120 hours of community service, not picking up trash on the highway. I ordered him to work in a hospital, in the maintenance and janitorial department. He would be cleaning the floors that nurses walk on. He would be emptying the trash of the people he mocked. A written apology, not a lawyer-approved statement. A handwritten 5-page letter to Ms. Morales explaining exactly why his behavior was a failure of character. Mandatory empathy training, a specialized program for high-conflict individuals. The ultimatum, I told him that if he missed a single hour of that service, or if I heard one more report of him mocking this process, I would vacate the probation and send him to the county jail for the maximum term. I looked him in the eye. You said your shoes cost more than her salary. Well, Mr. Wexler, those shoes are going to look very different when you're using them to mop a hospital floor at 3 a.m. Money can buy you shoes. It cannot buy you character. Today, you start earning yours from scratch. As I adjourned the court, the atmosphere changed. It wasn't about winning. It was about the restoration of balance. I saw Ms. Morales' shoulders finally relax. She didn't look happy. She looked seen. That's what people often want more than anything in a courtroom. They want to know that their dignity matters to the state. Logan Wexler stood there as his lawyer whispered to him. The smirk was gone. The invincibility had cracked. For the first time in his life, he couldn't buy his way out of a consequence. He had to face the reality that in the eyes of the law, he was just another man who had done a very bad thing. Later that day, my staff and I talked about the case. It's cases like these that remind us why the judicial system exists. It's the thin line between a society of might makes right and a society of right is right. If we allow the wealthy to spit on the workers, we don't have a civilization anymore. We have a playground for bullies. To everyone watching this, I want you to remember one thing. Your bank account is not your value. Your job title is not your soul. In a world that is increasingly divided, kindness and respect are the only currencies that never lose their value. Logan Wexler thought he was winning because he had expensive shoes. But Ms. Morales was the one who walked out of that courtroom with her head held high because she has something money can't buy: integrity. My father was right. The way you treat people who can do nothing for you, that is exactly who you are. Make sure you're someone you can be proud of when the cameras are off. Case closed.